mine actually with a confession. But before I get to that, I just want to tell you something about me, another fact to add to the list, which is that I am a huge mama's boy. And I'm going to start this talk by actually proving that I am a huge mama's boy. And in fact, I'm going to address my mother, who is sitting right there in the audience. Hi, Mom. Okay, so, Mom, I love you. And so when you and Dad and Chelsea and me would sit around the dinner table holding hands, getting ready to say our family prayer, I didn't want to upset you, and so I said our family prayer. We give thanks to the Creator who gives us one mind, one spirit, one soul. We must keep a healthy mind, take care of our bodies, and get along with one another. By now, you know that I only believed in half of this prayer. I believe that we must keep a healthy mind, take care of our bodies, and get along with one another, but I did not believe in a creator. And so, one day across the dinner table, when I had to tell you that I didn't believe, it hurt me. And it hurt me because I wanted you to believe. I wanted you to believe that I could grow up to become a good man. And there was a question on my mind, and I think it was probably on yours too. And that question was, can we be good without God? Now I know that all across America, similar dining table confessions were happening. According to a recent survey from Pew Research, about 1 in 4 millennials identify as either atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. More, another survey from Trinity College and CFI has revealed that about 2/3 of current college students identify as non-religious, and about 1/3 identifies as secular. So what should be clear from this is that my generation is largely a godless generation. Now, one possible outcome might be this. Fans of the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch will quickly notice Richard Dawkins, and then there's and then Samuel Harris, and then zooming in on the left, actually, there's me. Was anybody scared? So I'm not, and I'm going to tell you a story as to why I'm not scared. And the story starts with me as a budding atheist, and as with many new atheists, I began this love affair of science. Actually, here, right at the Macaulay Honors College, I started interning in many cognitive science labs, and meanwhile, I was a crusader for the Hunter College student government. So I had sort of these two sides inside of me. On one side, there was the scientist, and this guy was driven to pursue knowledge using reason and evidence. On the other side, there was the crusader. The crusader was driven to improve the lives of others. And so I had these two sides, and the question in my mind was, how do I meld them? I didn't want these competing priorities. Luckily, I was able to meet this guy, Dr. Daniel Casasanto. He's a cognitive neuroscientist who's now at the University of Chicago. But at the time, he was in New York, and I was working in his laboratory, and he and I decided to co-found the think tank. The think tank is a cognitive neuroscience lab, an education station that drives to local schools to empower disadvantaged youth with bridges to careers in science. And so this thing actually ended up moving to the University of Chicago along with me. And about 1.5 years later, I was at Chicago, I was at the university, and I finally had my first free day in a very long time. And so I asked a number of my friends, what should I do on my free day? And they said, you should go to this free zoo. It's called the Lincoln Park Zoo. And so I was walking in the Lincoln Park Zoo, and I was listening to some podcasts, as one does at the zoo. And piping into my ear was this guy, Peter Singer. You may know Peter Singer because he's one of the most famous living philosophers, but I had never really taken him to heart. So when I did, in the Lincoln Park Zoo this one day, he started speaking to these two sides of me, the scientist and the crusader. And it was especially with quotes like this. Reason helps us to understand that other people, wherever they are like us. that they can suffer as we can, that parents grieve for the deaths of their children as we do, and that just as our lives and our well-being matter to us, it matters just as much to all of these people. The idea was simple. The idea was that through reason, we can understand the needs of others, and then by using evidence, we can figure out the most effective ways to meet those needs. And this was really a light bulb moment for me, because here was someone talking about combining the sort of reason and evidence, the drive for reason and evidence of many scientists, which pleased the inner scientist in me, as well as the sort of passion for altruism of many religious communities. But the real light bulb moment for me was when he started talking about this growing community of people. So there's this growing community made up of largely millennials that he was talking about, and this is a community that really takes this to heart, that uses reason and evidence to try to figure out how to do the most good. And so I was intrigued, and I began to investigate. But before I tell you that story, I want to do a little exercise. So raise your hands if you want to know the answer to this question. Using the resources I have, how can I do the most good? Raise your hands. Awesome. Any misanthropes? No? I'm in the right place. Okay. So it turns out that if you just raise your hands, you're actually a part of this growing social movement. This is a social movement that raises its hand and asks, using the resources I have, how can I do the most good? It's a movement made of entrepreneurs, social workers, scientists, programmers, CEOs, students, designers, billionaires, economists, politicians, activists, philosophers, and more. I'm almost out of breath. It's also very unique in that it's a community made up of theists and atheists alike. And the name of this community is Effective Altruism. So I wanted to figure out what could bring together such a diverse group of people. And to find out, I took a plane out west to the Effective Altruism Summit, where I met many of these guys. You might notice me on the bottom there. Orange was my color that day. So this was a community of people who, like you, was raising their hands and asking, how can I do the most good? Now, it turns out that if you truly care about this question, if you truly care about improving the world, there are two superpowers. And this community was largely united around these two superpowers. These two superpowers are reason and evidence. And this is nothing new. There's actually a sub-movement of atheism called Humanism, and this is all about some atheists deciding that they want to improve the world, and many of them will use their superpowers of reason and evidence to do so. So effective altruism is largely just the name for what many humanists are already doing. So I want to take you back out west to meet some of these people who are using reason and evidence not only to do good, but to do an order of magnitude better. Meet Holden Karnofsky and Ellie Hassenfeld. These two were making about 6 figures at a hedge fund in the year 2006, and they decided, I want to give some of this away. But it turns out that if you lived in 2006 and you went online and you tried to figure out what are the charity evaluators for comparing the evidence of charity A against charity B in their efficacy, it turns out there really wasn't very good evidence, and there really wasn't any good resources at the time. So these two decided to found GiveWell. GiveWell is a charity evaluator that uses reason and evidence to try to assess how can I have the greatest per dollar impact. Since they've teamed up with Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskovitz of Good Ventures, and together they've raised nearly $200 million for some of the top charities. They also do some pretty incredible research into the question of how can I donate my money the most effectively. And what I'm about to present is not only some GiveWell research, but it's, in a sense, sort of like the paradigmatic effective altruist thought puzzle. So let's say you care about saving the lives of children from malaria. You have a number of options. One is that you could donate to a charity that gives out malaria medicine, and for about $5,000, you can save the life of one child. That's not very bad. But what if I told you that for the same $5,000, you could donate to a charity that gives insecticide-treated malaria netting to these same children, and for that same price tag, you could save the lives of 10 children. Out of these two charities, if you had the resources, which one would you choose? I think the answer is fairly clear, and this is also an excellent case of how using reason and evidence can allow us not only to do good, but to save lives. I'd like to introduce you to some more of these folks. So meet Luke Nozick and Peter Thiel. These two were co-founders of PayPal. They have billions of dollars between them, and what they've decided to do with much of their fortune is invest in organizations that are trying to find and empower people who are thinking about high-impact change. Meet Peter Singer. I mentioned him a bit earlier, world-famous philosopher, who's also decided to donate much of his free time to raising a whole bunch of money for Giving What We Can. Giving What We Can is a nonprofit that finds evidence-based ways to combat extreme poverty in the third world. And through the efforts of Peter Singer and many like Holly Morgan, Giving What We Can has been able to raise over $350 for evidence-based solutions to extreme poverty. Now, Holly Morgan, like many, and like myself, is a recent college graduate, and she's actually decided to donate 10% of all current and future income to the Giving What We Can pledge. And so largely through the efforts of small donors like her, this amazing charity has been able to raise an incredible amount to try to solve extreme poverty in the developing world. But I don't want you to think that effective altruism is just about donating money. It's also about expressing one's unique talent to do the most good in the world. And so I'd like you to meet a few more folks who are doing exactly this. Meet Mason Hartman. She's an organizer of Skepticon, and she also happens to be quite amazing in graphic design, and so she started lending her visual eye to many effective altruist organizations. Meet Julia Galef. She's an icon in the skeptics community, and she is now president of the Center for Applied Rationality, which makes as part of its mission to make effective altruists even more effective. Meet the wizard known as Elon Musk. You've probably heard of him. He is influential in SpaceX and Tesla, also a co-founder of PayPal. And he's decided to lend much of his effort and his genius mind to the Future of Life Institute. This is an organization that's trying to figure out what are the greatest risks to humanity, things that could wipe us all out, and how can we best combat them. Meet the very classy Ben Todd. Ben Todd, in addition to have a talent for being classy, also has a talent for research, and he's started using this talent for research at Oxford to found 80,000 Hours. 80,000 Hours is an organization where they're trying to research how can I have the greatest possible positive impact with my career choice. And so if you are either between careers or you are a current college graduate, I highly recommend checking out 80,000 Hours because they can help quite a bit. They help me. Here's a picture of me. And so I have a background in communications, and I've decided to lend this background to broadening the Effective Altruist Network. Now I want you to think, what is your special talent? And then picture what a prospering world looks like. How can you use this special talent to help us get to that prospering world? So I personally am very optimistic about our ability to get there, because although we may live in a godless time, we also live in a time where radically changing the world has never been more within our reach. So it just so happens that we are the wealthiest, most talented, most well-connected generation of humans to ever walk the earth. And that means that the wrong question is, can I change the world? The right question is, will I change the world? And I'm happy to inform you that if you are sitting in this audience, you are one of the chosen ones. If you're watching this online, you may also be one of the chosen ones. So here's the thing. The world is not going to change itself. That's not how it works. But it does turn out that there is a growing community of people who are thinking about how to use reason and evidence to have the highest impact change. And so we need you. That's why I'm here today. This is a personal invitation to join the world-saving party. In fact, I took a photograph of myself doing my best Uncle Sam impression, and here it is. Anyway, so it's clear that with the realization that we can use reason and evidence to do a whole lot of good, my generation, atheists, secularists, rationalists, humanists, skeptics alike, are flocking towards the effective altruism movement and joining with their theistic peers. And with that, I would like to end my talk with a challenge to my generation. And this challenge is to not just have the audacity to do good, let's have the audacity to use reason and evidence to do a whole lot better. Thank you.